Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Hogwarts Legacy video, and today we are scouring all the gameplay so far to find every spell revealed in both the trailers and the State of Play showcase. Before that though, you may be wondering how we're going to be able to cast the potentially hundreds of spells all at once, and I'm afraid to say the answer is we can't, because in a couple of versions of the gameplay showcase, we get just a tiny glimpse at the HUD that will feature during combat in Hogwarts Legacy. That HUD features slots for you to equip spells, and it only features 4 of them. There are no hints as to which buttons on the controller you'll need to press for each of these spells, but you should be able to reassign actions in the game, meaning that you won't just have to use the A, B, X, Y, or square, triangle, circle, cross buttons on your controller. You could remap them to the triggers instead. So there won't be restrictions in that aspect, but you will only be able to have 4 active spells at a time. At least that's what this small reveal has showed us. Perhaps there will actually be 8 slots, and the second set of 4 spells will be available when holding down the left trigger, or a similar mechanic to that. In the gameplay showcase, we were introduced to our first 3 spells and their own unique icons. First of all was Stupefy, the most basic attacking spell which we all know and is used all the time in gameplay, shooting a red jet of light at our enemies. And although it does do damage, it doesn't stun them completely in one shot like the Harry Potter films do. This is either simply because the opposing wizards are using a shield charm, or perhaps our wizard has only just begun at Hogwarts, so their ability to cast spells isn't as strong initially, and over the game we'll see our damage output increase and our enemies will fall faster. After Stupefy, we had what can only be Wingardium Leviosa, as its icon seems to be a callback to the first year's Charms class. And finally we see Accio, which is used multiple times in the combat demonstrations to close the distance to opponents and leave them vulnerable right in front of you. Accio is also demonstrated in puzzles, both pulling a moving platform of the castle and a painting towards you. And now that we're past the spells on the crisp and clean new HUD, let's get onto the spells revealed throughout the trailers, whether they've come from cutscenes or gameplay. First on the list was briefly mentioned within Stupefy, and that was the shield charm Protego. In order to defend ourselves, we can roll and dodge out of the way of incoming attacks, or we can deflect them using Protego. Now this won't be a game-breaking feature where no one can ever do damage against us if we use Protego, but it will work for a while against simpler attacks, like stunning spells for example. Unforgivable curses will be out of the question, of course. If someone starts shouting Avada Kedavra, you turn the other way and you don't stop rolling until you found cover. So we'll start off by continuing to run through the spells we've seen used in the gameplay itself, before the many spells hidden and scattered throughout the trailer. So Descendo allows us to lift objects and hit them into the ground, which sounds like it will come in handy against both wizards and puzzles. Expelliarmus, because of course it's here. The disarming charm will send your enemies wand flying, or any object or weapon being held if necessary. The disillusionment charm we see in the trailer being used as our answer for the invisibility cloak. It doesn't make you perfectly invisible, as there is nothing other than that cloak which can do so, but it gives us a very good camouflage, so enemies will have a much harder time spotting us, which makes this spell perfect for stealth. And now that we've got in behind an opponent, our character needs them unable to call for help or unable to move at all, which is where Petrificus Totalis comes in. Whether this curse wears off after time and our immobilised friend will just come back to life to hunt us again, or not, we just don't know at this point, but I can't wait to find out. Incendio is used in combat not only to cause more damage in the midst of a combo, but when used after summoning your opponent towards you, it creates a small AoE, an area of effect attack, so if you have multiple enemies getting up close and personal, you can deal damage to them all at once with Incendio. Now Lumos and Nox, they go hand in hand. Lumos casts a light from the end of your wand and Nox extinguishes it. Lumos is seen during the trailers and will definitely be needed when sneaking around the castle after dark. Now those are all the spells we've been allowed to see in action and in real gameplay, but the Charms Classroom is an absolute goldmine for other spells in this game. Now will we be able to use every single one of these spells? I mean hopefully, fingers crossed, but it's also quite unlikely. So let me know down below which of these you most want to see included. We have Relatio, which is potentially a simple attacking spell just like Stupefy, except maybe we learn this after a few charms lessons, and rather than just stunning an enemy, Relatio could knock them back or knock them off their feet for a longer stunned period. There is Episci, which is used to heal minor injuries like cuts and bruises, which will come in handy in combat and give us a chance to restore some of our health bar. And once learned, perhaps we will have to choose between assigning another attacking spell to one of our 4 slots, or a healing one to balance your abilities out. Legilimens is used by Snape in the Order of the Phoenix in their attempts to teach Harry occlumency, and it sees inside the mind of the receiver and shows their thoughts and or memories, so maybe that will be used as a tool to show more about the mystery of our character and why they haven't been allowed to enter Hogwarts until their 5th year. Next up is Pier Totem Locomorta, which is used by McGonagall in the Siege of Hogwarts in order to animate the decorative suits of armour placed all around Hogwarts. And judging by a couple of the enemies we're seen taking on, perhaps someone else is using that very spell against us. Tergio is used to clean stains, so whether they are blood or grease, this spell won't be used in combat and might just be used to keep your room of requirement in order, a mechanic where if you don't tend to the room for too long, the potions you're brewing there may take longer or even fail midway through because you didn't take good enough care of your cauldron. A mechanic like that might just not be included because Tergio is clearly the least powerful of all of these spells. But you never know, it would be nice to see this spell used somewhere. Aguamenti shoots a jet of water, so whether that will be used in combat, we'll have to wait and see, but it could definitely prove useful in puzzles, and Expecto Patronum should need no explanation, but perhaps this is a sign we'll see Dementors or evil beings of a similar power set attacking us throughout the game. Of course, these spells being on the wall of a Charms classroom doesn't mean that we'll be able to use them and we'll be learning them throughout our Charms classes, but you'd hope a spell as iconic as this one would be included. So bonus points if we get to choose our Patronus, or even if our decisions throughout the game dictate which Patronus you get to cast, that would be unbelievable. Next up we have Rictus Sempra, which is the Tickling Curse, and I believe Harry uses it on Draco in Book 2 in their dueling demonstration, so it'll be very interesting to see how that affects fully grown adult evil wizards, because if it has the same effect as it did on Draco, everyone will be using it all the time. Now, Alohomora will not be used in combat, but of course it unlocks doors, and will probably reveal new areas of Hogwarts after we learn the spell, because that might be quite a way through the campaign. Now, Lacanum Inflammari is another spell containing fire, but while Incendio seems to be the AoE attack, Lacanum Inflammari produces a more focused flame, so this spell could be used to set enemies alight from distance, while Incendio does the damage at short range. Glisio is the charm that turns a staircase into a smooth slide, and I'm praying that we can use this both to speed up our descent through the castle, but also on other unsuspecting students too. Whereas Repello Mugellum is a charm to prevent us muggles from seeing or entering a certain area, and is most notably used by Hermione while the main 3 were constantly on the run in the Deathly Hallows. So does that mean that at some point we'll be leaving Hogwarts and trying to fend for ourselves? I'd love that, but nothing in the trailers has indicated it so far. It has definitely said we'll be exploring beyond the castle walls, but so far as being on the run, we'll have to wait and see. Immobilis is pretty much a shorter way to say Petrificus Totalis, as it is also a freezing charm, although Immobilis worked on the Whomping Willow when cast by Professor Lupin, so it seems to work on both the living and the sentient trees, which is always good to know. And Mobilicorpus is the charm used to lift bodies a short distance off the ground and move them to another location, which could definitely help with hiding unconscious wizards in stealth sections, or just your classmates if you don't want the prefects to catch you. Periculum is quite a cool and unique charm amongst this list, as it isn't even an attack or a defense, it's simply a charm that allows the caster to shoot red sparks from the tip of their wand, whilst Reparo, which we see on a very large scale in this showcase, with Professor Fig fixing a destroyed bridge as we explore beyond the castle grounds. The next one is called Mobiliarbus, and all these spells can be found in the blackboards in charms behind our character and our companion friend, Natsai Onai. On a wide shot of the charms classroom seen later in the showcase at the 350 mark, we can also see Ridiculous, so hopefully we get to face a Bogart in a Dark Arts class. You never know, and it would be another opportunity to give us exposition on the character's mystery, just like the Moon Lupin casts in Book 3. Reducto is up there, potentially another strong simple attack, a straight blast like Stupefy and Relatio before it, but maybe when it's used as a finishing blow on opponents, they are completely obliterated into the dust, because this is a Peggy 16 after all. Now, Wuddy Wuzzy is a spell used to hurl a small projectile at a high velocity, and I believe it's actually shown in the gameplay too, with the action mapped to the R1 button, and prompted when within reach of an explosive barrel. Once the player presses R1, our character launches it towards whichever enemy you're looking at. Aberto will most likely be used passively throughout our time at Hogwarts, as this is simply a charm that opens doors, but Confundo, which is used by Hermione on McLaggen in the Quidditch tryouts, doesn't quite have the power of Stupefy, but it might leave an enemy confused enough for us to slip past unnoticed in a stealth section without them realising anyone is around. And Bombarda is the exploding charm, which detonates on impact and causes a small explosion on the object or person who finds themselves in its path. This can be used to blast open a locked door, which could open up some new routes throughout the castle, but now that we've blasted open a door, perhaps we'd be looking to hide our trail and lock it back up again, in which case we'd need Colloportus, which locks and seals a door so that it can't be opened manually. That means it's not unbreakable. Magic would definitely do the job in breaking it, but it would cover up the evidence of us sneaking around quite well. Scourgify seems to have the same or very similar properties to Tergio, and it's just a weak charm used for cleaning other objects. But Avi's, you're in for a surprise with Avi, or Avis, because this is the bird conjuring charm. We've seen Draco conjure a snake in the Chamber of Secrets whilst dueling Harry, but it seems we could be learning how to conjure birds, and no doubt send them towards our enemies to distract or damage them. And finally, Quietus, which is the opposite to Sonorous, which we've seen Dumbledore use at the Triwizard Tournament, and Voldemort use in the Battle of Hogwarts, where they increased and amplified their voice to a much higher volume. Quietus is what they'll have used to end their speech, as it quietens the speaker, or the target if it's aimed elsewhere. So perhaps this could be used briefly to buy time if you're spotted in a stealth section, so you can stun the spotter or disappear back into safety before they can call for backup. And that, to the absolute best of my knowledge, is all the charms, curses and outright spells that we've been fortunate enough to see in the Hogwarts Legacy trailers. I apologise for how long this video has turned out to be, but as I said, let me know down below which spells you're looking forward to using the most. For me it has to be Expecto Patronum, if it's included, otherwise I'm so interested to finally use the Killing Curse, which I mentioned on this list but not as its own section, but Avada Kedavra is of course in the game as we see it, completely uttered during the trailers, and that's something we definitely wouldn't have been allowed to do if this was a Peggy 7, or if it was us playing as Harry or a supporting character from that time frame. So leave a like if you're excited too, subscribe if you enjoyed, because we're steaming towards the release of this game. Finally, there will be plenty more videos on this channel, and once the release date is finally here, you'll be the first to know if you hit that red button. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time.